Hello and welcome back. This is Don't Watch at Night, the podcast dedicated to scary movies and scary books of the Latin horror and Spanish language variety. I am Valerie, and Veronica and I are just about done with our month off. We have been taking the month of June to be with family and do fun summer things with the kids, but we're also getting ready to hit the 1 year mark for this show. And that's a fun milestone to reach. We're very proud of ourselves. Thank you very much. So we've curated some of our favorite moments from a year of horror watching and reading. And not to worry, we are coming back to you next episode with new film discussion. We'll be back on our ish, so stay tuned there. Last episode, we brought you a selection of moments that highlighted what I enjoy about our podcast, and that's the opportunities we get to research the historical roots of some of the horror stories that we've looked at. So today, we've got a selection of episodes that Ronnie picked out, and each of these feature a story element that Ron tends to enjoy the most in storytelling of any kind, whether it's film, TV, literature. It could be a comedic element, the undead, magical realism, gritty main characters who aren't all that altruistic. These are things that can often produce the kinds of stories that stay with you. And we've got a packed episode today. So let's not waste any more time and get to it. In episode 5 from the way back, Ronnie and I watched Phenomena, which is a Netflix film. It came out in 2023. This was a quick favorite for both of us. It's spooky, it's funny, it's charming. Those Hepta group ladies are a hoot. And it's an easy rewatch for both of us for sure. So much so, in fact, that we would very much welcome a sequel or any kind of follow-up story featuring these women again. So here is a clip from episode 5 on Phenomena.
I think Paz was my favorite one. She was kind of the no-nonsense, but she also kind of had more of the comedic lines, or the comedically timed lines, I should say. But she was just kind of no-nonsense, kind of get the job done. So I liked her the best. So I did. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I had no idea what to expect, but it was a nice surprise. It was a nice, like you said, nice change of pace from what we'd been watching. I think I was expecting more something along the lines of like Shaun of the Dead kind of horror comedy. It wasn't quite to that
like
comedy level.
Yeah,
it wasn't quite to that comedic level, but I still enjoyed it. You know, it certainly wasn't as heavy as some of the other foreign horror films that we've seen to date. The ending left me feeling a lot more cheery than most of the other ones did. So I enjoyed it. I did like it. I liked that the protagonists were women of a certain age.
Yeah.
In fact, I think there was only two characters that were under the age of like 25. Everybody else was older, so that was great. And I liked kind of the interaction that the three mature women had, and just their fearlessness. They just had no fear of anything. It was like the sort of stuff is just every day to them, which I guess it is. That's kind of what they do. Whereas I would have been like freaking out. They were just kind of like, this is just another day.
Their dynamic as these three women, fun and bickering, and that back and forth, I thought was really cool. It was charming, it was spooky, but not overly so. The humor moments were fun, like you said, not necessarily laugh out loud funny, but plenty of lighthearted moments. Father Pilon makes the decision, the unwise decision.
Unwise.
He goes to the place of their new case. It's an antique shop. He goes to go investigate on his own. So yeah, rule number, like we've talked about, buddy system. Yes. Buddy system. You don't go
backup.
Off.
You need backup.
You need somebody tag teaming with you. So he goes
At the very least, you need someone that can run for help. That's what poltergeists are thought to do anyway. It's usually kind of centered around one person. A lot of times a younger teenage female, for whatever reason. That's probably some kind of patriarchal viewpoint there. Right. But anyway, so they kind of write off everything that had happened when the antique owners were there, all that weird stuff. They just kind of wrote it off as, oh, well, this is all just energy that's emanating from the trauma that this little girl is going through. And so she's caused all this. So they kind of write it off.
All this time, all of these cases, you've been wildly successful. And you're telling me you've never once been able to communicate with my Carlos. And so she's bitter about that. But in that moment, she makes that decision. I'm going to save my friend. I'm going to use this thing that has been so special to me and that symbolizes the man I've loved and lost. And so she does it. She saves her. They pull her out. And then as she looks back, Sagrio watches the belt fall from the beam and kind of just sink underwater. And she kind of just, she makes her peace in that moment that she's going to let him go. When the camera zooms out and you see those old ladies turning the corner on the street, those were the real ladies. Those are the real.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
I wondered if it was. I noticed them and that there were 3 of them, and I was wondering like what that was, if it was supposed to symbolize something.
Yeah.
So it was the actual 3 women, because I know that one of the women, the real life women, passed away maybe shortly after this movie was made or released.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Because
cool
I have
she got it to be in the movie.
Yeah, because I have that she died. Paloma, I don't even.
Navarrete?
Yeah, that she died in 2022. So she may have died before this movie could be released. So they dedicated
That's cool
it to
that
her.
they got her in there. That she has a part in there. And I was listening to it, and there was an end credit scene.
No, I didn't see it.
But I don't understand it.
Well, no, tell me, because I didn't see it. Dang it.
So the guy, I don't know his name. He was the waiter in whatever that little cafe was that they met.
The one who's hitting on Sagrio.
Yeah.
Flirting with her.
It shows him, and there's like this stack of glasses, like drinking glasses, and they're all stacked, upside down, like they've been washed and they've been stacked like in tiers. And like one by one, they just start breaking and falling away. And then he just kind of gets like a weird smile on his face, and then it ends. So I don't know what that was about.
Maybe they're lining things up for a sequel, because like I read a snippet of somebody's review saying that you kind of almost want this to be like a series or something.
Yeah, like a TV show.
Yeah, like I would totally watch it as a series. I would watch a procedural with these women where every episode they're solving a new case. Next up, we hop over to episode 8, because this is where Veronica got to stand in the sun with her zombies. Ronnie has said this more than once before. She does not profess to be any kind of zombie expert out there, but she's no slouch either. She knows her stuff. So in these next 2 clips, which you're going to hear back to back, Ronnie takes us through a bit of Zombie 101, and then we get to dive into our thoughts on the 2007 movie Wreck, which is a found footage film, and it was fantastic. It's so much fun. So here's a bit from episode 8.
I don't present myself as a zombie expert. I by no means have seen every single zombie movie that's ever been produced, but I am a great consumer of that particular subgenre within the horror genre. And the interesting thing is that zombies, or at least our modern, the zombie that we all picture typically in our minds today, the modern zombie, the flesh-eating, cannibalistic zombie, and I are both turning 55 this year.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's the 55th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead. Came out in October 1968. I was born in December, so it's actually a few months older than me. But that's when George Romero took the idea of zombies, although interestingly enough, they were never called zombies in the movie. I think they were just ghouls. So the word zombie wasn't actually used, but he's the one who kind of took the lore of the zombie, tweaked it, and gave us the zombie that we all know today. So yeah, it's celebrating its 55th year. So like back in I think it was like the 16th century, when like the French and the Spanish were like abducting people from Africa away from their homes and bringing them over to what we now know as Haiti and the Dominican Republic, brought them over to work as slaves on the plantations that existed there, the French owners, the Spanish owners. And so, of course, they brought over their spiritual beliefs from Africa. But death, because they had very specific ideas about spirits and what happens to spirits after they die. But death was seen as not as a bad thing. It was seen as a release from that
hell.
Yeah, from that hell. It was seen as a relief. But the idea of zombie, that souls could be captured and a dead body could be reanimated without its soul, and then basically be just a worker who never tires, never feels hunger, never feels pain, just goes on and on and on. That was a fate worse. That took away that one escape, that the escape of death suddenly wasn't an escape anymore. So the original zombies were victims, basically. They were these things to be pitied, until of course Americans got hold of it. And and then of course we honed in on the aspects that we didn't understand about voodoo or vaudou, that kind of morphed into
the modern Hollywood zombie we know.
Where the zombie went from being a victim to being a monster. And that's the actual other interesting thing that I learned about kind of the history of zombies in cinema, particularly in American cinema. And other countries, I'm sure, have their own zombies. But speaking for just like the history of zombies in American cinema, which is the other article that I emailed to you, the one in, is it Vox?
Yeah, I think so.
Vox
Yeah.
article? Yeah,
Vox.
which kind of talks about the way zombies kind of history and the socio-political history of America, and how zombie movies have often reflected whatever the current fears of the time were,
Mhm.
from everything from civil rights to, the Cold War and spies and threats from outer space to pandemic. We've certainly seen,
Uh-huh.
like The Last of Us right now, and even World War Z, the zombies kind of arise out of some sort of global pandemic. That was kind of
Yeah.
an interesting read for people to check
It
that
was a
out.
very interesting read. And you know what really kind of struck a nerve for me and kind of I found terrifying that I did not realize. I can't remember if it was the Vox article or one of the other ones you sent, but it was one of the resources talked about how I guess like there are various militias across the country here in the
Yes, which I did
States
not know. Did not know.
freaking doing zombie preparedness training. And I was like, oh God. I was reminded watching this, what you're feeling is just constant adrenaline.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I got so caught
It's
up
constant
watching
chaos.
constant chaos. And I got so caught up watching it and trying to like make out what I was looking at that I would forget to listen to the Spanish and I would forget to like follow the subtitles. So I kept having to back up and be like, what did they just say? Because I'm like so busy focused on like trying to
Mhm.
see stuff. The other thing that I feel is kind of a make or break element of found footage movies is the actors and their
Mhm.
ability to kind of play to the camera, I guess. So
And to make it
that
look like they're not
right
like they're
and
just really
introduce that
people. Yeah.
yeah, like that level of familiarity. So, like Angela, who we'll talk about in the movie, but I thought she was super endearing right off the bat. So you're immediately very invested in her
She was really
because,
cute.
yeah, because she plays her so convincingly. That's Manuela Velasco. And she establishes that relationship with the camera, and we are the camera. The audience is the camera. I thought that was really great.
When it's well done, you kind of forget you're watching a movie, and it's almost like you're really watching this real thing that happened to these real people. And they have to look like, when you see a news report on television and the reporter's interviewing, an actual person that lives on the street, house burned down, so they're interviewing the neighbor. I mean, it has to come across not as a polished actor, but not so bad it's a crappy performance. So it's a very fine line.
Angela, especially towards the end where things are really getting out of hand, Angela is just like screaming at him, like, do this, Pablo, what are we doing? I'm
Yeah.
like, Pablo's doing the best he can, like, back off.
Turn the light on. I'm trying.
The other
Poor Bob.
thing that I wanted to mention about found footage stuff before we dive into like the actual movie itself, what I thought this film did really well, that other found footage films can do really well, and I think it works to their advantage, is you don't really have to ever fully show the threat.
Mhm.
So like in the movie, we catch glimpses of the infected humans, but not so close that we get to really study them, not so close or in focus that we get to really spend a whole lot of time trying to process what we're seeing. It all
Mhm.
happens so fast. It just means like you can do this kind of stuff. You can do these kind of films in a very budget friendly way, I think. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it seems that way. And I feel like the Blair Witch Project is kind of an infamous example of,
Mhm.
doing something on a low budget that ended up being a huge hit. Like the very second that he turns his head away from her momentarily
Mhm.
and is like trying to address the others in the room, the very second he did that, I was like, he's about to get bit. And sure enough, she just like launches at him. And it happens multiple times in the movie where it's just like the very second that they would look away for just like a split second, the infected human would like launch at them and bite them. And it's just like, it's just a reminder for all of us, do not turn your line of vision away from someone that you suspect is rage filled and cannibalistic in nature. It will not end well.
Yeah, I mean, the lady's dress was clearly covered in blood. I mean,
This is one of those times where it's like practice safe distance. You don't need to get any closer. Just stay away. I know our parents listen to this and I'm going to get a note, but I don't care. The firefighters are just calling bullshit. They're like, this is bullshit. Like, you let us out, or at least tell us what's going on. So I had a lot of respect for that. I had a lot of respect for Manu sticking up for the people and fighting back for the people. I also had a lot of respect for Angela, who was demanding they get to keep recording because she's like, we need to tell this story. We need to tell what's happening in here. I just hit my mic. Sorry, everybody. I'm gesturing wildly with my pen, but we need to tell tell people what's happening in here and how we're being treated and how this is being handled.
The current trend of zombies, like there's been different kinds of zombies. Zombies can be created through like ritualistic things that, there's been in the past zombies that are created by some type of, chemical or radioactive exposure. But the latest trend of zombies, and this goes to World War Z, The Last of Us. Have you seen The Last of Us?
I have not. It's I want to, but I haven't had a chance to start it yet.
Not enough zombies in that TV show for my taste. It's a good show, but I want more zombie action. So I'm hoping for the next season that there is more zombie action. But anyway, This current trend of zombies, so World War Z, definitely Last of Us, they're zombies that are created out of pandemics or infections, viral, or in the case of Last of Us, it's fungal infections. So the world just having come through COVID a few years ago. And again, this is where zombie movies are kind of mirroring fears that we currently have today. So that's what makes it scary, is because we know pandemics can happen. We know things can be highly contagious and spread just because of the way our cities are structured, the way people fly internationally. So that's what's scary about it.
Okay, consider this commercial break, Val. I'm coming in about halfway through this episode with a PSA, if you will. It's a reminder that Ron and I are going to be at the Texas Haunters Convention next month. That's July, specifically July 13th and 14th in Mesquite, Texas. We'll be at this thing, having the time of our lives, being with a bunch of weirdos who love Halloween and haunts just like we do, and you can be there too. Head over to TexasHauntersConvention.com and get your tickets. Be sure to use Sister24 at checkout for your discount and come see us. Wear something spooky or don't. I'm not trying to tell you what to wear, but I am telling you, you should come join us. Okay, bye. All right, we're making another jump here and we're going straight to episode 10, our special 10th episode, where we got to watch El Espinazo del Diablo, or The Devil's Backbone. This is a great one. It's 2001. It's from the mind of Guillermo del Toro. Lovely film, as he so often does with his storytelling. We also got to go through the rest of his filmography, ranked according to vulture.com, not ranked by us. So after you wrap this up, just go listen to episode 10 in full because we had a blast. Anyway, here is that clip. After Carlos, a young boy whose father has died in the Spanish Civil War, after he arrives at an ominous boys' orphanage, he discovers the school is haunted and has many dark secrets, which he must uncover. Definitely worth a watch, and probably any good Del Toro fan needs to be familiar with this movie. As we just saw, it's number 3 on the list, so you should know this movie if you haven't. Give it a look if you haven't seen it yet, and then come back and listen to this episode. Ron, we both watched this last night, so I want to know how you liked it, but then also if you can kind of help us. There's a lot of characters in this movie, so if you can, and I can help you, but let's run through who people are, so because there's a lot of names to know. So, but how did you like it?
I liked it. It was nothing like I thought it was going to be. I remember this movie coming out and the name of it, and I don't know why I thought it was going to be something like The Hills Have Eyes.
That's what I thought it was going to be. Coming out. I have no memory of this.
I thought it was going to be something like that. Something like a cross between The Hills Have Eyes and Deliverance.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of always steered away from it. But anyway, so this was nothing like that. It's a ghost story, essentially. So it's not like super high on the horror, for me anyway. It's not super high on horror. It's just more ghost, more suspenseful. But I really enjoyed it. I thought, in keeping with Guillermo del Toro's brand, very atmospheric. He always does a great job of kind of creating this atmospheric setting that kind of has undertones of, something deeper is going on. Loved all the muted colors that they use, which kind of helped create that kind of vintage photograph almost aesthetic.
So there's Carlos, right?
Carlos.
And then
he's our entry into this orphanage. And
then there's other little boys that are worth knowing, but the other main boy that comes into play, I think his name is Jaime. The one who we perceive as kind of being the oldest. Yeah, the oldest of the bunch, Jaime. There's Carmen, the principal or the headmistress. There's the doctor, who I think his name is Casares. And then there's Conchita, who I love, and I think I
missed her name.
We'll get to that, but yeah, I thought she got the shaft. Jacinto, yes, the best.
Can we say the words? Can we say the words to describe him?
Of the movies I've seen and enjoyed the most on that list, it's definitely been the stuff that I guess is veered more towards horror-centric stuff. So even though I've seen the Hellboy movies, and I liked them. Pan's Labyrinth is definitely more of a favorite of mine. This is more of like kind of a ghost story, but also kind of like a murder mystery. So just to kind of give everybody kind of like just a little background of this, it like I mentioned, set during the Spanish Civil War, which I think was like the late 30s. So when this film opens up, it's, you know, at some point in time in the late 1930s. So the film opens with like a bomb dropping from a plane, and then it kind of pans to a little boy laying on the ground bleeding. And I remember, and we'll come to learn that this little boy's name is Santi. And I remember watching it and thinking, oh, well, somehow he got injured from the bomb that fell from the plane or something like that. Like I correlated the two. But anyway, yeah, it opens with the mysterious death of this little boy at this orphanage. And then it kind of flashes forward to the present day of this time period where Carlos is getting dropped off at the orphanage. And lo and behold, it's freaking Jacinto and his henchmen. And he gets in front of her and he's like, they're watching. Just say you're sorry and get in the truck. And she's like, I'm not afraid of you. She says it multiple times. And he pulls out a knife and is threatening her. He's like, say you're sorry. They're watching. And she refuses. And so he freaking stabs her in the side.
I know. I was like, oh, please have a good, not a good end, but, you know, a horrific end that
right. I was like,
is deserving of your...
You better get what's coming to you and then some, because you're a piece of crap.
I'm sure that there's probably some symbolism in that exchange that they have, being that this is the Spanish Civil War. I'm sure there's probably some sort of metaphor going on there between...
Yeah.
The left side, the Republicans not giving in, you know, going down to the last. But it probably certainly went over my head. And a lot of American audiences' heads. But I'm sure, as I'm sure there's symbolism between the unexploded bomb that lands. It's kind of this thing that's ticking, because I think one of the boys even says that is an
interesting thing. And I guess I didn't mention that at the top. Yeah, like at the top. So we open on the scene of the bomb being dropped from this plane.
There's consequences coming that we don't know yet.
That we don't know yet. That's a good point. Yeah, I never mentioned, guys, the bomb doesn't go off. The bomb gets dropped, but it doesn't go off.
Okay, here it is. The opening voiceover words of The Devil's Backbone. What is a ghost? A tragedy condemned to repeat itself time and again. A moment of pain, perhaps. Something dead which still seems to be alive. An emotion suspended in time, like a blurred photograph, like an insect trapped in amber.
This next moment is from one of my favorite films that we've watched, period. Ronnie obviously enjoyed it too. It's Tigers Are Not Afraid, directed by Issa Lopez. She is one of my favorite directors. And you want to know something? I think she's one of the most exciting directors out there right now. I'm putting it out there. This was Ronnie's first look at her work, but I adore this woman. She's a risk taker. And quick aside, go listen to the official True Detective Night Country podcast now that the season has ended. Go listen to her interviews there. Her process and what she finds compelling is so cool to hear. So, okay, but anyway, back to this. Can't say enough good things about this movie. Ronnie and I both cried at various moments during this episode. So here is a clip from episode 17, Tigers Are Not Afraid.
A haunting horror fairy tale set against the backdrop of Mexico's devastating drug wars follows a group of orphan children armed with 3 magical wishes running from the ghosts that haunt them and the cartel that murdered their parents.
Yeah, I loved it. I cried. It was beautiful. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was just hauntingly gorgeous. And yeah, we can get to like the particulars that I thought were so striking about this film. But what did you think of it? How did you like it? This was your first taste of Lopez.
Yeah, and I did not know what to expect. I hadn't even looked up any plot summaries. So I hadn't watched a trailer for it. So I like really went in like zero, knew nothing about it, had no expectations whatsoever. And I really, really loved it as well. I will say I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know that I personally would consider it horror per se, in the sense that, you know, it didn't really have like the jump scares and the traditional horror tropes, but it was still a beautiful movie. I thought, you know, it's been described over and over as kind of being a dark fairy tale, and I very much think it had that quality, similar to The Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth. I just really liked it all. One of the things I love in books, in movies, whatever the medium is I love that concept of a found family. And so that kind of had that with this little group of orphans, and
it was like a little Mary. It was like the Lost Boys, Peter Pan and the Lost Boys.
It just broke my heart. Yeah.
I did read about how like this was, like you said, shot primarily all in Mexico. It was
Mm-hmm.
specifically, there's a municipality in Mexico City called Azcapotzalco, and it was also shot in the Colonia Guerrero neighborhood primarily. So I thought that was kind of cool. I think like one of the articles that we will link for you guys mentioned that nearly all components of the artisanal production were done in Mexico, so including visual effects. So that was really cool and something that Lopez says she's really proud of. To your point, I agree. Like, just dark fairy tale is how I would describe it. I know that when she was shopping this movie around to like various festival circuits,
Mm-hmm.
one of the other articles I looked at mentioned that like all of the, I would call them prestige film festivals. All of the
Mm-hmm.
prestige film festivals turned it down,
Like your
but
Sundance, your
but like ultimately, Fantastic Fest is the festival that picked it up. The more she gets into these characters and the storytelling, the deeper she gets into the story, the more she doesn't have the heart to go full hopeless. Like she's that's what she's learned about herself through Night Country, is that she is incapable of being completely without hope. And
oh, thank
so
God. Because you saw in one of those articles that she actually had originally written a darker ending than what happens in this movie.
oh no, I don't think I missed that. Tell me, how did she envision it going?
She didn't really go into a lot of specifics. It was just it was going to entail, like, when at the end, when Estrella comes out after having accomplished what she accomplishes at the end of this movie, we find out that the rest of the boys have all joined gangs.
Aw.
So you know what, at least they'd be, some of them hopefully still breathing.
Criminals,
yeah,
but
so
alive.
yeah, but yeah, so she had envisioned a darker ending, but then, kind of like you said, she realized that she wanted to end with a little bit of light to show that there are things you can still do. There are
Mhm.
things that you can still do to try to help, to try to change things. This movie makes a lot of use of magical realism, which is not uncommon in
Mhm.
Latin American, literature. The blood from that victim starts a trail and it's following
Mhm.
her home. So that's kind of the first inkling that we get that this isn't just going to be a movie based 100% in the real plane. There's going to be
Mhm.
these are magical realism elements. So had you come across this kind of
Yeah,
thing before?
like in films especially, I
Were you
think that
expecting it? Were you expecting it
I was
for this
expecting it
movie?
because unlike you, I do watch trailers. So
Well, see, I did watch the trailer right before we started this podcast.
okay.
That almost made me start crying again, and I'm glad I didn't watch it because, see, I think trailers spoil too much nowadays. They're too long. I have issues with
Uh,
trailers, people.
ah.
They're too long. They give away too many plot elements, like the
Well,
shot
but
of the tiger at the end. That was a great thing to see if you didn't know it was coming. So
sure,
I
I
don't watch
guess. I,
trailers.
I, I guess. Like I'm with you in that trailers are too long and give away too much. I guess what I like are teasers, and teasers are shorter, and there's usually not a whole lot of context that you're given for what you're seeing. It's just visuals, and it's setting a tone, a very important tone, in my opinion. So I like a good teaser.
Even if there's more crap in the future for her to face, she knows she can face it.
Because we have to remember we are warriors, we are princes, we're fighters, basically. And in our final clip today, we had to bring one out of the Don't Watch Book Club vault, and it could be none other than The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias. This book sticks to your bones. It challenged us. It scared us, scared the hell out of me. It was a haunting read in so many ways. And if it's not on your read list, put it there. I dare you. So let's get to it. Let's go now to our final clip from episode 18. It was a book club episode talking about The Devil Takes You Home, and warning, if you haven't read this book yet, some spoilers are coming your way. Here we go. I wanted to ask you, because I think this is true of you. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is true of you. What is the challenge for you with morally gray characters that makes it really hard to like sink your teeth into something, like sink your teeth into a book, for instance?
It's not necessarily morally great characters, because a lot of my favorite characters, either in movies or in
Mhm.
literature, are anti-heroes.
Yeah.
They're morally gray. They're not 100% white-hatted good guys. They do bad things. They make bad decisions. But there has to be something. Like, they can't just all be bad decisions. There has to be a kernel of. Well, it's kind of like going back to what Oh, you're going to kill me.
Issa Lopez. I
Issa
already
Lopez.
knew. I already knew what you were
I was
going
like,
to do.
it's not Alyssa. What is it? Issa Lopez, like what she said, it's like she can go dark and bleak, but she has to know that there's a light somewhere. It doesn't have to mean that it has to be a happy ending, but there has to be a little glimmer of something in there that is, like you said, rootable, that is something that I can say, okay, you're okay. And even though I don't agree with 99% of the decisions that you've made, I can still be in your corner. The beginning of the book, tragedy happens. Mario and his wife, they have a 4-year-old daughter, Anita, who's diagnosed with leukemia. He loses his job because he's taking too much time away to be with her in the hospital. So he loses his insurance. The medical bills are piling up.
You feel great empathy for this person who, I mean, what it means to have a child who is sick with like a life-threatening disease. When it comes to people who live nowhere near the border, making all kinds of chess moves, especially when it's like politicians who don't even live within the state of Texas trying to talk intelligently about the southern border, because it's just like you're so far removed from what life is even like there in those regions that it's like, just shut up. Those parts of the book, in the early sections of the book where Mario is discussing that, really resonated for me. And so I'm just like, yeah, totally.
It's harder for me. Like, I have a lot
Well, you're speaking
less
to your truth. Like, it's hard for you
it's
to,
my truth.
yeah.
And here's why. And this is why, because it's hard for me to sympathize or have a lot of sympathy. Yes, there are all these things that have worked against Mario in his life, but then some of these decisions, particularly the decisions that he's making in this book as it progresses, they're just like getting worse and worse and worse. Like, you can do two things in life. You can listen to your better angels, you can listen to your, the devil on your shoulder. And here's where, as readers, you can't help but bring your own life experiences, your own baggage per se, into your reading. How you perceive what you read is going to be, you're going to see it through the lens of your own life, your own personal experiences. And so I think we've mentioned it on the podcast before that I'm the oldest of 3 girls, 3 sisters. Valerie was the youngest. We had a middle sister, Vanessa, that we lost to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma like 20 years ago now. And Valerie, you and I both saw how hard she fought to live. And because of that experience and watching our own parents grieving the loss of a child and us grieving the loss of a sister and seeing how hard she fought, I have like little to no patience with characters who choose to throw their lives away. I just wanted to shake him and say, what the hell are you doing?
It is brutal, and it's only going to get worse because the entire time I'm like afraid of the big job. There will never be a normal. And at that point, it became a lot easier for me to get to the last chunk of the book that dealt with this job, because I was more or less just like, well, whatever happens, happens. Like, let the bullets fly. That brings me to a question. This book is bringing up weird feelings for me, where the moments where the story seems to veer into the paranormal or the otherworldly, I find it almost comforting. Like, it somehow lessens the horrors of what the characters are doing in the moment, because to have it just be a human evil is almost too much for my head to get around. Is that why? Is it because for you too, it was almost like it's easier for us to accept something outside of us than that the evil is coming from within?
Well, no, because in the book, and again, I finished this a few days ago also, so it may be getting confuzzled in my head, but like, even when he kills that first guy, the very first job he ever did, when the man's lying there dead, he's seeing like things moving under his skin.
Yes.
And then with the head cartel dude whose name I forgot that they're working for in Mexico, there are things like moving under his skin. So it's like I didn't take them to be as like completely human, or if they were human, there was some sort of malevolent spirit or entity or
it's
darkness.
like the devil's working through all of these people.
Working through in them. So I don't know. I don't know that I considered them fully like just normal people. What are these things?
I want to know more what those are.
And
like, what
I
are
didn't get
those?
that.
You know what I was imagining? Because I know this because I have gone cave exploring with my husband in Oregon. And one of the things that our guide kind of took us through when we were deep in the caves exploring, kind of spelunking, if you will, he had us turn off our headlamps so that we would observe just how pitch black it gets. In my naive brain, I thought, well, we'll have some light come in from the entryway of the tunnel or whatever, the entryway of the cave. And sure, by the entrance, you would have that. But we were deep in the cave. Like it is just pitch black. And what he told us was the first thing that kind of shuts down when you're in that situation, when you're trapped in a cave, is your eyeballs, because your eyes are working constantly to process the information you're taking in and send it up to the brain and like give you that kind of information sorting. In the absence of light to be able to see anything or process anything, your eyes are like one of the first things to shut down because they're conserving energy. And so when that happens, the tragedy of it is that you could be trapped in a cave, lose your sight. Days later, you might pass by your exit out of the cave and never see it because your eyes have shut down. Yeah. And so it's tragic. Like you can die that way. And so what I was thinking was like, maybe these creatures were once humans who have just taken up living in this cave and have morphed into these inhuman looking creatures. I don't know. I wanted more exposition on that.
When I used to be more active on Goodreads and I would write reviews, and not professional reviews, people, I would always start my reviews off with, I would select a quote or a passage from the book that kind of gave a sense of the vibe of the book, but without giving anything spoiler away. So I'm always, when I'm reading a book, I always tab passages that I like, or I'm always on the lookout for that particular passage that would be the thing that led off my review. So the one that I selected for this book: outside, the night was pregnant with the possibility of the wretched earth, with secret agendas and promises of death. But they were all quiet, the way all things are before they actually arrive.
All right, loves, that's going to do it today. Thank you so much for going down memory lane with us. Remember, we're coming back in all of our frenetic chaos next episode, which will be July 8th. And you can find us on all social media at Don't Watch at Night Pod. Let me try that again. At Don't Watch at Night Pod, all one word. This is usually where we announce the upcoming film we'll be talking about so that you have a chance to watch it or rewatch it in preparation. You can find us on don'twatchatnight.com. And if you like what you're hearing, give us a follow and a review. It really does help other weirdos find us, and we're always so grateful for that. So that's it. We'll see you next time. Bye. Don't Watch at Night is a Nest production hosted by me, Valerie, and Veronica. Editing by me. Music by Omar Chakor. Production support for this episode provided by Lorenzo Villarreal and Alex Street. Listen to new episodes of Don't Watch at Night every other Monday, and don't forget to give us a rate and review. It's the best way to help us grow.